Morning. So, we don't all read the same books. We don't all watch the same documentaries. We probably don't have the same intellectual capacity. What that means is that even if we read the same books and watch the same documentaries and engage people and read articles and watch the news, the way we depict and understand things just wouldn't be the same because we just don't have the same level of maybe what you'd call intelligence or an ability to analyze situations and make them make sense. I'm making this video because of the Magashule warrant of arrest that came out yesterday, and a lot of people are weighing in on it, of course. He's been implicated in the 225 million rand asbestos tender that was sideways, corrupt. So people want to see exactly what's going to happen. Some people are saying that the ANC must suspend him for now while he's being investigated. A lot of people are not understanding why he hasn't been arrested, even though the warrant is out. Is it because they're scared of him? Why has he been asked nicely to appear in court or at the police station? I'm not sure how the process goes. So I'm making this video to explain something that probably a lot of you already know, but maybe it hasn't been articulated in a way that will make it make sense to you and so that you can explain it to other people. Human beings are animals. I say this all the time, and maybe a lot of people don't understand what I mean by that. We've obviously defined ourselves on racial lines. We've defined ourselves on gender lines. We've differentiated each other on religious lines and nationality lines. But fundamentally, we're all different animals. And even after you remove race, gender, sexuality, religion, nationality, even age, you'll find that certain people behave like certain animals. People that behave like lions, there are people that behave like hyenas, there are people that are snakes, there are people that are like dogs, there are people that are sheep, etc., etc. We are not the same, and there's hierarchies. In the world that we live in, there have always been what we now know as criminals. People that prey on others, people that exploit others, people that take from others. That has always been the case and will always be the case. There are animals that eat other animals, and they do it for survival. Some of it do it because they actually enjoy it, and it's who they were meant to be. The law has been created by these human beings because we think we're moral and decent and we're smarter than other animals. So we create these things called laws, whereby we set these guidelines for how life should work and how things should operate. What we misunderstand, us normal people on the ground, which I'm trying to emphasize for you, is that the law is created for you. It's created for us. It's created for the normal people. Don't skip a red robot. Don't speed in a 60 zone. Don't beat your wife or your children. Don't steal. Don't kill others. These laws are created for you, and the systems have been created such that if you violate any of these laws, there are penalties. If you don't pay your tax, you'll be penalized or you'll be jailed. If you do some of the things that I mentioned before, you'll be fined or you'll be jailed. We no longer obviously have the death penalty in this country. That's for us normal people to behave. The schools that have been created as institutions, the churches, even the way the media portrays a lot of laws and what's right and what's wrong has been devised for you. It's not devised for people at the top. Those people play according to different rules because they set the laws. So you set the laws for your kids. If you steal, if you break curfew, if you talk back, if you swear, you will get a hiding. Your kids understand that those laws don't go both ways. They only come downwards. So you'll swear, you'll steal, you'll break curfew, but there will be no repercussions for you. And that's how power dynamics happen in the animal kingdom and in the world over. And some of us have forgotten this. The law for people at the top does not necessarily apply to them. A lot of us live according to our own laws, right? If I'm traveling at night and there's a red robot and there's no cars, I drive through it. I don't think, oh my gosh, I might get arrested. I'm aware of the risks. I'm aware of how that works. A lot of us lie in certain application forms, whether it's NSFAS, where we're lying about our parents' income, or we lie in other spaces where if we do not lie, we will have to pay a penalty. We might have to go to jail. We lie. all the time. Some people lie about work experience. Some people put fake references on their CVs so that when you call, you think you're calling a company. Meanwhile, you're calling their friend or their uncle who's going to pretend like they were their past employer. It's what we do to get an advantage and to win in life. The apartheid government was never punished for what was deemed illegal. And mind you, it was deemed illegal after apartheid collapsed, after apartheid ended, after Nelson Mandela and the ANC came out of jail. And then from 1990, arguably 1994, moving forward, our laws changed. And it seems that we do not want to apply these laws retrospectively. What that means is if discriminating against people based on race, which was done with the Lands Act, Bantu Lands Act, where black people were forcefully removed from their land and relegated to townships legally. The law said this is allowed. The police and the soldiers were involved in shifting black people, taking their land. It was legal. It was fine. That's what the law means for those of you who don't understand sometimes. When the law changed and said, no, we now have a constitution, people must now live on the land. And part of the constitution is about redressing imbalances of the past. So if there was land that was taken, either give those people back their land. There's a process for that. It's a very sensitive, controversial process in this country because it hasn't yielded much. Or compensate the people. Give the people 100,000 rand, whatever that land was worth that you took from them. That's correcting the imbalances. A law like Black Economic Empowerment was meant to say, look, since you guys built an economy by excluding black people where it matters, not as employees, but you guys weren't paying fair wages. You guys weren't giving them managerial executive positions. You guys didn't give them a chance to build these companies with you. So the Black Economic Empowerment Act was set up and it's been revised, I think, twice. And some shares were given to some of your favorite black leaders, as we now know today. And we know BEE has been misused to make certain people rich while the masses kind of remain poor. But the apartheid government was never jailed. People that committed atrocities during apartheid, who killed, who maybe raped, who beat up black people. Desmond Tutu, who I dislike so much, created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission where white people could come and confess their sins and they were forgiven. Beautiful. White people in Europe decided to give Desmond Tutu the Nobel Peace Prize for his great work, along with people like Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk. I hate the Nobel Peace Prize because it is decided by a group of people that have agendas somewhere, and they decide and dictate who behaves according to them in the world. And I believe guys like Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela were given Nobel Peace Prizes because they didn't seek revenge of people that oppressed and killed and stole from black people. So the white people that controlled the Nobel Peace Prize were like, oh, well done. You guys protected our white people and you kept your angry blacks at bay. We will give you a nice little noddy badge to say well done. And today we celebrate their Nobel Peace Prizes without fundamentally understanding how disrespectful it is that they were given these Nobel Peace Prizes. Back to the law. The main thing I want to say in this video is in South Africa, the leadership structures are different. There's politics, of course, political leaders, there's religious leaders, there's traditional leaders, there's business leaders, and then there's other type of leaders that I'll get to. Political leaders are straightforward. We vote for them. There's campaigns. The politicians get voted for, and then they set the laws. Out of 26 million voters in this country, we've got 57 million people. Out of 26 million voters, only about 17 to 19 million actually voted in the last election. So 17 million people voted for what we now call our members of parliament, the people that set the laws and manage the state and the judiciary and all these nice things. Then we've obviously got our religious leaders. You've got guys like Ray Macaulay from Rema. You've got guys like Likhanyane of the ZCC Church. I think there's a guy called Mudise. There's the Shembe Church. Then obviously you've got guys like Opushiri or Pastampor, guys that are very influential from a religious perspective, to a point where if politicians came close to them or tried to affect their churches, these people have the power to influence their followers to attack and maybe even kill these politicians. We've seen it in the past with the Christian Crusades. We've seen it in the past with certain Islamic groups. I'm not talking about ISIS and Jihad and Al-Qaeda. I'm talking about way before that. There were Islamic groups that went around killing and enslaving people to spread their Islamic beliefs so to speak. Those are religious leaders. Then there's the traditional leaders, your King Zwelithini of the Zulus, your Dalingcebo, Emaxhoseni. There's the Venda King. I think South Africa recognizes it's either 7 or 13 kings. I'm not sure. They keep cutting them down, and they're probably going to keep cutting them down because they're currently just figureheads. But these guys also have some type of influence whereby if politicians are annoying them, affecting them, as we saw with Ingonyama Trust, where Zwelithini was saying, if government wants to dismantle the trust, they must expect a war. He's going to get Zulu people, his Zulu army, to go and fight government and the people that are trying to dismantle the trust, which is a very big part of his power hold in KZN. So I've spoken about political, I've spoken about religious, I've spoken about traditional. Then there's business leaders. Your Christo Visas, your Johan Ruperts, your Nikki Oppenheimers, Wendy Applebaum, I guess a guy like Patrice Motsepe. There's a lot of business leaders that are very influential. They're influential because they own a lot of really big companies. These companies pay a big part of tax, which funds your politicians. They obviously pay a lot of the campaign money for your favorite politicians. And then some of them have really great networks globally. The Rupert family, for example, is very close to the Rothschilds family. They even have their own wine that they make. Rupert is also very well linked in France and Switzerland. Some of these guys have business interests in America. Some have business interests in Asia, across Europe. So these guys are very influential globally. They may be more influential than your favorite politicians. That's why we talk about these business people buying politicians and owning them, and that the politicians are their puppets. It's because a lot of these guys fund politicians, not just via tax, but even in their own personal capacity. We've seen it now with Busasa, with Angelo Akritsi, talk about how they used to fund people like Onomvula Mukunyane, with Gavin Watson, and a whole host of other politicians so that they could behave the way that they want as business leaders. Then the last section, the last bit I want to talk about is these unorthodox leaders. And I'm going to speak about two specific groups. The one group is the taxi industry. The other group is the Cape Flat gangs that deal drugs. The taxi industry is untouchable in South Africa, mainly because it's a very big, it may look very clumsy, but there's some type of organization that Santaco has. They are organized in their own way, in their own unique African way. And if government affects these people, they are willing to take up arms. They are willing to kill. They've shown it over and over again. So government keeps their distance away from these people because they fear them and they respect them. Similarly, the Cape Flat gangs, where government knows the big players there, but they can't kill them, they can't take them out because they know that the clapback, the retaliation is going to be very, very heavy. So these guys at the top all kind of respect each other. You all have your little jurisdiction. Politics is your thing, we won't disturb you. Church is your thing, we won't disturb you. Business is your thing, we won't disturb you, etc., etc. Now, in a situation like what's happening with UACE, UACE is part of what's called a trio called the Premier League. It's himself, it's Supra Mohamepilo. I think that's his surname, Mohamepilo. Supra in the Northwest Province, and then you've got Didi Mabuza in Mpumalanga, ACE being the Free State, the Premier League as it's known, who came out, their story came out very strongly when Uzuma was leading, that Uzuma just needed to win the Premier League in order to win the elections because these guys are so influential on the ground that they can make things shake. The next thing is that they are supposedly thugs. These guys, they run all the tenders in their provinces. They have control. They've killed people in the past that have come up against them. And the story around how they operate tenders is that all the tenders in their provinces are theirs. And anyone who gets a tender in their province is literally a runner or a manager for that person. So you become a face. If ACE owns all the tenders in the Free State and I get awarded a tender, I basically get told how much of that tender I get to keep, and the rest goes wherever it's meant to go. But these are obviously rumors and speculations. So I've spoken about the different types of leaders, and I want to speak obviously about the different groups, even within politics specifically, the different what we call factions today. These people are meant to respect each other because they operate differently. They have different funders. They have a different outlook on how things should be run. You've got Thabo Mbeki, who had his own ideology. You've got Nelson Mandela, who had his own. Jacob Zuma, of course. Cyril Ramaphosa today. When guys at the top are fighting against each other, and it's looking like it's not being done according to the right ways. You know, like the mafia, you have to ask for permission to take someone out. Cyril is underhandedly looking like he's trying to take out what was deemed the Zuma faction, the guys who are part of the radical economic transformation group, the guys who want to dismantle what's called white monopoly capital. And he's doing it via the Hawks, he's doing it via the cops, he's doing it via this commission, Judge Zondo, the Zondo Commission. And obviously Cyril is supposedly clean, is this moral Tumamina guy. But those of us that understand politics understand that Cyril, even when he was, I don't know if he founded or he was one of the co-founders or one of the big heads at NUMSA, when he led the big mine workers strike all the way back then, he was liked by the bosses, the Oppenheimers. I forget these other families, the Oppenheimers, the Hersov, I think. I know the Manel family is very close to the Motsepe family. So he's been funded and supported by big white money for a really long time. So when the BEE deals came, and he was chair of that commission that ended up drafting the BEE Act, he was one of the first beneficiaries, along with some of his friends that were beneficiaries. Obviously, his brother-in-law, Patrice Motsepe, is a beneficiary. His other brother-in-law, Jeff Khatebe, is a beneficiary. So they seen as puppets and faces of white monopoly capital. And they seen as the people that would never, obviously, retrospectively apply what's deemed the law to white people that have looted from this country and built some kind of advantage and privilege based on past apartheid laws. A guy like Jacob Zuma is obviously seen as someone who tried to break some of these laws using the Guptas, using guys like Umzwanele Manyi, Brian Mulefe, Tutumieni, Shaudi Mutsoneng, some of these guys who try and dismantle the stronghold that white business people, white business leaders had in SAA, at the SABC, at ESCOM, for example. And then there was the fight back, obviously, where Zuma was seen as corrupt, the Guptas were seen as corrupt, Tutumien and Shaudi are seen as corrupt, Brian Mulif and Machela Koko, who was the CEO, were removed. Then the media, who is also owned by these private big white companies, sent out this propaganda that these people are corrupt. And again, the law is designed not for them, for us at the bottom. What's right and wrong is decided by them. But when you look at them at the top, specifically the rich whites and how they got their wealth, they got it what's deemed illegally, unfairly. Let's actually use the word unfairly. So the only way for other guys at the top to try and even compete with these guys, because you can't do it fairly. I can't go against ShopRite, as big as it is, and think, look, if I just work really hard and if I just put in the hours and if I, it doesn't happen. You need some type of advantage. ShopRite, Afgri, a lot of these big apps and a lot of these big companies had a huge advantage from apartheid. A lot of them got subsidies from government. A lot of them got tax breaks. A lot of them were protected in terms of regulation. Regulation is one of the ways you protect big companies. What regulation does is it creates what we call red tape. Red tape is literally setting barriers to entry. Do you want to get into ShopRite? You maybe need a 50 million retail license. Do you want to export this? You need to get this license. Do you want to get into mining? You need to get into the mining charter. Do you want to start a bank? You need over 200 and whatever million to start. Those things make it difficult for a new player to come in. You can't do it fairly. You can't. It's unfair. So Zuma and his RET, Radical Economic Transformation guys, including Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and I know Gayton McKenzie is a big supporter of RET, we're trying to break up the stronghold that white people have on the economy, the few white people at the top. Again, I'm not talking about us normal people. Normal white people have jobs. They're teachers and nurses and cops. They work at a bank. They have credit cards just like you. They have to pay a bond. They have to pay their car installments. They're worried about retrenchment. Those are guys that complain that BEE is taking their jobs or keeping white people out of jobs. They're the normal middle-class white people. The guys at the top are playing a completely different game. So for Zuma and them to try and dismantle these guys, they had to do what is illegal. But there's nothing wrong with it at the top, because the only way to eat with a lion is to either kill that lion or to steal what they've captured. And that's what the current or the previous black leaders were trying to do in this country. They were trying to take the economy away, if not the whole thing, just some of it, away from these rich white people who are beneficiaries of colonialization and apartheid. And they failed because these white people obviously were smarter. And today they've got a guy like Cyril at the helm who is very sensitive to their desires and their needs, because he's a beneficiary. Back in NUMSA days, with BEE coming through, and even today when we see that he's got over $1 billion funding from companies like Bidvest and other companies, Cyril is a big beneficiary of that group of business leaders. Zuma and his guys wanted to create their own black billionaires that can fund their type of ideology moving forward. And the only way to do that is to fight at the top. Now, you've got a guy like Magashule who's incredibly influential. He's the Secretary General of the ANC. And like I said, he's part of the Premier League. And if you've got a guy like Cyril, obviously as the face of these rich white business people and maybe even other foreign interests, trying to take out these guys, what needs to happen if he succeeds, if the Hawks arrest Ace and other big guys, what needs to happen is that Ace and these guys need to clap back and kill him and kill his people and maybe even kill some of his white funders. That's how the jungle works at the top. This is what I was trying to say about us being animals. And the fact that the law doesn't apply the same at that level. The law is for us. For them, it's whatever. They need to fight back. If Ace ends up in jail, if other big black politicians and business people end up in jail, it'll prove that these guys were never really a threat. They were just a dog with no teeth, so to speak. And it'll prove that these rich white people and the black deployees they have like Cyril and maybe Patrice are actually really influential and they're still strong. So we need to see what happens there, but we need to take ourselves out of that, because what we deem corruption and illegal and fraud only applies to us. It doesn't apply to those guys at the top. Those guys operate on a different model. So I hope that, I know this video has been a bit long. I hope that this has given you a bit of clarity into what's happening and how it doesn't really involve us. We're just mere spectators in what's currently happening, and where we need to focus our energy on working really hard to keep this country functioning, making sure that our kids get better education, not at schools, but teaching your kids that, look, you need to get food, you need to get shelter, you need to get clothing, and you need to focus on the basics. Whether you go to school or not, just find a way to make that work. Number 3, we need to work together where we can. It's difficult to live a dignified, decent life working on your own. Number 4, we need to really try and split this thing of race and gender. I know it's very difficult. I know the history of this country. I know what happens even today in this country. There's a lot of really dumb white people who don't understand the dynamics of how the world works, and they bought into the race agenda from apartheid, and they're still racist even today. That's why they say, oh, the ANC is corrupt and the ANC stole and look at the potholes, because they don't understand the dynamics of what happens at the top. There's a lot of dumb black people who think these black people that are in power are for them. And they think, no, don't worry, Zuma can have Nkandla, and it doesn't matter that these tenders, no, these people they're upsetting whites. Yeah, at least, no, they're doing it for themselves. It's not for you. So the black and white people in the middle are actually very similar. They just need to take off these racial glasses. We need to take off this gender thing of saying, because I have a penis, I think I'm better, or I'm smarter, or I'm a better leader. Because I have a vagina, I must be beaten, I must fight. These constructs are created by the people at the top to get you guys fighting along with each other so that they can carry on doing what lions and hyenas and wolves and tigers do at the top, while we mere dogs and sheep at the bottom go about our business. The sheep follow whatever the trend is, and then the dogs are loyal to whatever master is feeding them. We see it in the journalists. The journalists will write any story as long as they're funded for it by a certain newspaper. We see it with certain activists. Today he stands for this thing, tomorrow he stands for something else. All you need to do in the shift is see who was funding him there and who's funding him there today. Those are the dogs. They're loyal to whoever feeds them at any given time. We see it even with certain politicians. We need to understand how the world works. We're animals, fundamentally. The law is a mere suggestion, and it's a suggestion for the masses. It's not for the people at the top. The people at the top operate on a very different plane. And now we need to see what's going to happen to this Ace Magashule situation. If he eventually goes to jail, along with a whole lot of other black heavies, I would like to see a clapback to Cyril and his people and his white funders. If that doesn't happen, then it will just prove once again that black people, unfortunately, no matter how powerful they are at the top, can't take on white people that are powerful at the top. The white people that are powerful at the top are too strong for them. But that's the world that we live in. That's the game we live in. It is power struggles and it's power dynamics. And we're just watching it unfold and play out in front of our eyes. Enjoy the show, be a spectator, stay safe, and focus what's important for yourself, your family, and your own psyche. Pin you all the black pen. Cheers.